The model is based on the mill at Little Cressingham. Hello, this is Meccano Bill with another model, and this time it is a combined water wheel and windmill of the type found in Norfolk. This is based on a mill that actually exists in Norfolk and is quite an interesting design. At the bottom on the left you can see the paddles being driven by water, although in this model they're obviously powered by a motor, as we don't have any water in Meccano. And these paddles would have powered the millstone, which it was halfway up the model, and would provide one of the outputs of grain that were being processed. The mill itself was built around 1750, and at first only the water wheel was working and the sails were added later. On several occasions it was damaged by wind. It is a very tall model, being about 5 stories high, and it eventually fell into disrepair but was renovated circa 1960, and it is still a working mill today as a visitor centre under the Norfolk Mill Trust, which looks after windmills and water mills. There aren't many combined mills in England, and so we chose this model for its interest. At the bottom to the left and at the rear of the mill is the wheelhouse, and this is powered by a motor here which replaces the water, as I explained before, and the gearing provides a reduction in speed of the motor. And then there's finally a belt drive which is just here, and that provides the final drive to the paddles. The engine house would have originally had a roof on it, but this has been omitted so that you could view the gearing. An interesting feature of the water wheel is that the windmill was built right beside the stream, and that this can be seen, or a representation of it can be seen to the left of the mill. And of course at this point here there would have been a system to lower boards which would have blocked the water or controlled the speed of the water, so that the turning of the water wheel could be controlled. At the front of the mill there's 2 doors here which would allow access for the grain to be brought in and loaded, and will also give access to the millstone, which is on the ground floor. As there are no parts to represent a millstone in Meccano, I have not modelled this at all. Above the doors is the crane hook, and from here would be a rope, which again I haven't modelled, but that would have allowed lifting of the grain from the floor and from the door to the mill onto a vehicle which could have been brought to the front and side of the mill. The upper wheel, I think the grain was sent down to the first floor by a chute of some kind, so there was no need for another crane, but I'm not certain on this point, but it seems likely that that would have been the best way of doing it. There was in fact accommodation in the mill, and people lived on around the fourth floor, and a point of interest is that around about 1760 two people died when the weather was so cold that they shut themselves in the mill with a heater, and there was insufficient ventilation, and of course carbon monoxide sucked or deprived them of oxygen, and unfortunately they were found dead in the morning, and that was the miller and his wife. The sails on the original windmill were not in one piece as they are in this model, but there were a series of sails which ran up each arm, and they could all be adjusted to catch the wind for the best drive of the windmill. And I believe this may still exist on the model today, which can be visited in Norfolk. The problem or the limitations of this model are making or getting a motor small enough to drive the sails, and having got a motor small enough, the speed of the motor for the sails is too fast when the water wheel is travelling at the correct speed. So at the moment we only have the sails turning to demonstrate that speed. The motor can be seen in the top of the model, and it is interesting to note exactly how small the motor is, and in fact the linkage to couple it to the sails takes up more room and weight than the motor, which is only about 1.5 inches long and is very tiny indeed, and I look forward to using it in a vehicle where it would be easy to fit the motor under a bonnet with no problem at all. Another feature to mention, and this time on the windmill, is the fact that there was a vane behind the model on the tail of what was called the boat. This was called a Norfolk boat, and the roof on this would have been curved and it would look like a rowing boat turned upside down. And on the rear would be a vane controlled by the wind, and this would allow the sails to turn automatically into the wind. I haven't modelled that because, again, I've got no wind to demonstrate it and I'm doing this by hand, but you can see that the top section can be turned and would in fact always face the wind, and it would be an automatic control. On the real windmill there would have been in fact a mechanism so that the miller could shut the sails off or slow them down if there was a gale, because obviously the sails would only turn at a certain speed before they destroyed themselves. One further restraint that I would like to mention is that the original windmill was tapered from the bottom to the top, but as there are no suitable parts in Meccano to achieve this, I have built the model in steps. But you would see that the original building would have been just like a tapered windmill, gradually tapering to the top. If you tried to do this in Meccano with the straight strips that I use, you would need triangular parts to fill in the air gaps at the bottom. Once again, I would like to record my thanks to David Bache, who acted as a research assistant and effectively my eyes looking at the model or the original building on the internet and then describing it to me so that I can reconstruct it as the model. So thank you, David.